Ahoy, ahoy, and welcome to this special year-end video wrap-up for 2022 and also a look ahead to 2023. It's me, Daryn Kirscht, and I just want to talk about a few of the projects that I have come out with over the past year, even the past couple years, and talk about the company that I started, and just going to talk about certain things that I'm looking to do moving forward. So, first and foremost, I think, now would be a great time to start off with my book, The Snyderverse Saga, the culture-shattering phenomena behind Zack Snyder's DC film universe. I have the book here next to me, as you can see in the background. I published it back in October of 2021. And, I just first off just want to say thank you, everyone, for the support for the book. It means so much to me that I spent so many hours and days, weeks, months, even years working on to the point where, I felt comfortable enough to publish it and get it out in the world, and to know that people have read through it and enjoyed it and spread the word about it it's so awesome. And I can't thank everybody enough. When thinking about this book, really, at the end of the day, it's just, to me, I wrote it as a passion project, really. I had been writing for a couple different entertainment websites at the time, that being The Pop Break and Real Anarchy. Very different kind of websites covering movies and TV shows, but it was a passion of mine to, obviously I'm a huge fan of the Zack Snyder movies and of him as a person and as a filmmaker. And, the longer I've been here on Earth, the more I appreciate it. So, Man of Steel was just so vital to me growing up, and and same obviously with Batman v Superman. I've never been more excited for a movie than I have been for either of those two movies. And then obviously with everything that fans, all of us, including me, rallying around Zack and supporting the idea of the hashtag Release the Snyder Cut movement, and obviously the charity aspect of it for raising awareness for and money for suicide prevention, specifically the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, AFSP. It's so awesome. And to be able to see his movie finally be completed the way that he envisioned, how he initially had shot it, and everything that happened, even during the making of it, which kind of seemed a little tumultuous at times, finishing it, I guess, but for him. But I'm so happy for him, and just the support for him, and obviously to commemorate it in his late daughter Autumn Snyder's memory is just it's so great. It's so awesome to see fandom still do that. Obviously, fandom can be a little bit contentious and controversial, I guess you could say, but especially nowadays. But you know what? It is what it is. And at the end of the day, I've met a lot of really cool people online because of this fandom, and friends that I'll probably have for life, and friends that I would still love to meet and see in the future. And I'll get to that maybe a little bit later as well. But just about the book itself, I just, like I said, it was a passion project. And back in 2020, late 2019, early 2020, I kind of decided, I wrote longer articles at the time. And when I kind of sat back and thought about it, I was like, I just want to write one really long article. And that's kind of how I viewed the book. And then it just got longer and longer. And I decided I'll make it a book, And that's how I viewed it, was just a long article. And I had a really good outline, a structure for it, following the events in chronological order of what happened throughout the movies. Obviously, I begin with Man of Steel and how Man of Steel, the idea of Man of Steel kind of came to be, and then kind of ventured off into the actual process of making the movie, how it did, financially and critically, and the conversation around it. And then obviously I went right into Batman v Superman after that. And back at the time, that was really the focus of the book, was Batman v Superman, because it was so talked about. Like, I've never seen a movie with so many rumors and this and that, and the hype around it, and how it's the first time Batman and Superman were going to be in a movie together. And to me, like, I was so for it. I was watching all like the the bootleg videos of people like the Batmobile in Detroit, look, here it is, stuff like that when they're shooting it. And just everything about it, I was just engulfed in it, I guess you could say. And it was something that meant so much to me, and I felt like it was made for me, really, in a way. So obviously to see that kind of finally come to fruition was really cool. And the debate around the movie when it was released was a pretty big topic as well, because obviously this was supposed to start a cinematic universe, and as we all know, things sort of changed a little bit after that. And I think it was really important to cover it and cover everything about the movie, the way it was talked about, the behind the scenes aspect, everything about it, really. And back at that time, there wasn't, when I was writing the book, the Snyder Cut hadn't been announced. Zack Snyder's Justice League hadn't been announced that it was going to happen. So the focus of the book was a little bit more focused on BVS, because this was, if you think about the Snyderverse Saga, at the time, that was the central movie that everything was kind of catered around. And then obviously, like, the latter part of the book would talk about the fallout, if you will, like everything that happened after, and the direction the cinematic universe went, and kind of the idea and the hope that maybe one day we'd get some sort of Zack Snyder's version of Justice League be released. And while I was writing the book, sure enough, the November 2019, the 2-year anniversary, that huge trending event was vital and really important. And obviously there was that screening in February 2020, and then of course when it was announced in May, right, of 2020, I mean, that was like, I kind of sat back, I was like, all right, you know what, I'm just going to make this one really big long Snyderverse Saga. I'm going to cover everything, including Zack Snyder's Justice League and how that does, and kind of a hint at where do we go from the future? Where is the future going to take us? I don't know, right? So that was kind of the idea of it, and so I expanded the Man of Steel stuff, and that's some of my favorite stuff in the book is from the Man of Steel. I mean, every time I reread the Man of Steel section, it makes me want to watch the movie, and that's kind of the goal of this book, really, in a way, was to inspire people to not only learn something new behind the scenes, but also kind of in a way, I guess, understand things for what they were going for, what they were trying to do with these movies, and not just what people were telling them how to feel about these movies, right? So it's so exciting for that to happen. And actually, when in the later stages of writing the book, I actually came down with a health condition that kind of prevented me from working, I guess you could say. And I had a lot of free time at home, and that truly allowed me the time to finish the book and kind of do it the way I wanted to do it. And at the time, during the process of writing the book, and I was always thinking about, how am I going to publish this book, right? Like, am I going to traditionally publish this book? I was a little concerned. I didn't think people would want this kind of book out there, and if they did, they'd probably want to change it. And obviously, writing the book, it was really, really important to me, really vital to me, to make sure that it was the way that my vision for the book. And by saying that, I mean, I cover everything from a journalistic, neutral point of view. I don't take sides. Obviously, I'm a fan of Zack Snyder and his work. I mean, you kind of have to be to write a book about the Snyderverse Saga, right? So I knew that there was going to be like, oh, this is a fan book, like this is a book just, by a fan, and people discredit it, but it's like, I'm also a writer, and I wrote this specifically, like, not targeting anybody. I'm not attacking anybody with this book or in the book or anything like that. I'm not seeking, what's it, clout, whatever that word, I'm not seeking in like attention or whatever, right? Like it's not about that. To me, it was about the content of the book, and that was what's important. And that should be what people think about when they think about the book, not so much me, the writer, but this was my way of covering everything and giving it a spotlight. So that was really, really important to me, to kind of cover it from a neutral point of view, and let let the facts speak for themselves, I guess is the big thing I'm trying to get at. And like when the book launched, it was really cool that I was featured in articles from the Daily Planet, Zach Benz, Sam Camp, super thankful for them for covering my book and talking to me about it. And obviously I got to talk to my buddy Brad Curran from Screen Rant, and that was a really fun conversation as well. We kind of talked about the book and talked about Zach and talked about his Netflix projects, and it was a really fun article. I really recommend people check out both those articles. I also got featured in a couple articles back from my hometown area in Minnesota, like the Echo Press and Independent News Herald, and really cool conversations as well. Very different kind of conversations, but fun nevertheless, and important, I think, as well, to kind of reach out to and talk to them as well. And obviously I kind of teased earlier this year that I was maybe looking at potentially working on a special edition release, not the George Lucas kind, but just some kind of new version, volume 2, you could say, of the book. That was just kind of an update, maybe have a new forward or afterward. I wanted to change a couple things within the book itself that just, one of the things when I was working on the release of this book and the final editing and all that kind of stuff, I actually worked with a company called Paper Raven Books, and they helped me bring the book to life. But essentially, when working with them, I paid for their services of like the editing and the cover design and whatnot, and I got to keep the rights for the book and the profits and all of that kind of stuff. So that was really cool, and they were so awesome to work with. I mean, shout out to Paper Raven Books, Morgan Gist McDonald, and my book project manager, Karen Furr. She was really cool as well. And there's so many people that I talked to. Sheena, that I initially talked to at the beginning, the process of working with them. I definitely recommend people to check them out and their content as well. And they were so awesome to work with. And yeah, so shout out Paper Raven Books. But there was a couple things that I missed in the process of releasing the book that still kind of bugged me a little bit to this day, just a little bit. But it is what it is. And at the time, I was looking at maybe doing some kind of special, I guess you could say, update of the book. And part of the thing with working with Paper Raven Books is that they don't really know a lot about this kind of stuff, and I don't blame them. I think it helped the book in the end overall that they didn't really know a lot of the content of the book itself. They hadn't seen the movies or weren't familiar with the fandom or any of that kind of stuff. And so to me, they brought this completely different perspective and point of view of the book. And when they came back with certain feedback, like, hey, do you actually mean this? Or, hey, I think it'd be better if it was like this. Very collaborative process, I would say. That's part of the reason why working with them was so awesome. But when they would mention stuff like that, it would either make me go, oh yeah, you're right, like that is better. Or I would say, no, that isn't what I'm thinking of, but it means that I haven't necessarily done what I need to do to make it clear to readers who aren't super well versed with this stuff so that they understand. And so in that case, I think it made the book a lot better, that I was able to clarify certain things to make it understandable. Even my grandmother, has never watched these movies or doesn't know any of the people that are involved with the making of these movies, she was able to read the book and still understand what I was getting at. And so I feel like in a way I was successful in there. But this new updated edition was just minor things that I had missed. Like there was an illustration that I missed. There was a misspelling in there that I missed within the illustration. And it's my fault because I missed it. And I just didn't give myself enough time to really truly go through and double check things. There's the way I worded a couple things and whatnot, just kind of, there's a couple of moments where I didn't love the way I worded. I would phrase it differently now. Even the back of the book, I even kind of I guess you could say I messed up on the wording of Zach Moore's podcast, my friend Zach Moore, OS Lawn to Smallville, shout out. And I wrote instead of writing level 33.1, roundtable episodes of the Smallville podcast, I just put 33.1, and so I was kind of like upset with myself about that. So little things just kind of drive me nuts because I'm a perfectionist in that way. But I ran into some problems and whatnot, and realized, I guess I should say, I didn't realize how monumentally huge of a task it would be to do that. So that's kind of delayed for the foreseeable future, sadly. But I like the book the way it is. I'm still proud of it, and I was featured in a couple different podcasts talking about the book this past year. I was featured on the Always Alone to Smallville podcast, his Snyder Cut specials. It was the number 8. So there's 8 of them right now. So if you want to hear a lot more about Snyder Cut and Zack Snyder's Justice League and the road to get there, he has 8 episodes of that. And thankfully, he asked me to be on the number 8, the last one that he has done. So that was a really fun conversation, just talking about the book. And I was also featured in a special Patreon episode for the Digging for Kryptonite podcast, where we talked about the 2016 Suicide Squad movie. And it's kind of interesting. It was kind of fun because most of the time when people talk to me about the Snyderverse Saga, it's usually, a lot more heavily based on the Zack Snyder movies. And with Suicide Squad, it was kind of refreshing in a sense because, yeah, he was an executive producer on that movie, right? And it fit within his world. But there's a lot of changes and things that happened with that movie. And it made for a really interesting conversation to revisit it, 5-6 years later, So really thankful for all the support again for the book, and I'm super proud of it. And I'm just thankful for everybody who enjoys the book. And if you've read it and you like it, definitely leave a review on Amazon. All the versions of the book are on there. It's usually on some kind of sale, ebook, paperback, hardcover. So I would just say check it out. And if you like what you have read, or you have any thoughts about it, you can always leave a review on there, rating, and you could also follow the pages that I have for that book. I have a Twitter and a Facebook. It's at Snyderverse Saga on Twitter, and Facebook is just the Snyderverse Saga. So, round 2, the film sequel podcast, right? So I launched my own podcast back in, I guess you could say late 2021, but it was technically the beginning of 2022. And so far during the year, I released 20 full-length episodes of the podcast, which are all featured on Buzzsprout, but are also available wherever you get your podcasts. And I also had an additional round 3 episode on Patreon as well, because guess what? I launched a Patreon for the podcast. Yes. And it was so cool to be able to do that. I don't have a ton of patrons or anything like that just yet, but I recently updated the tiers for this upcoming year. So I hope that, I am able to provide enough content or make it worth the while of supporting the podcast. And for those that do support the podcast, I am super, super thankful. Doing this podcast has just been so much fun, and the guests I've had on there have been so great and so awesome. Each and every person brings their own unique twist and personality to each episode. And, I truly believe that's what makes these episodes so interesting and so engaging. Not so much the movies that we talk about. I mean, and they are, but it's not so much the movies, but it's essentially the guests that really make the show flow, not trying to rhyme or anything right there, but you get what I'm saying, it's the guests have been so awesome to have on the show, and I've been really thankful to be able to do it, where we talk about movie sequels, specifically the second film in a film franchise, and how it compares to the original and the magic of returning for the sequel. So that's kind of the tagline for the podcast, and it's been a lot of fun. We've talked about a lot of different kind of movies, some all-time awesome, great movie sequels, and we've also talked about some movie sequels that maybe aren't so great. But that's just part of the fun of it too, is covering the whole gamut of all these movies. And not every film sequel is going to be amazing, right? And, it's fun to cover a lot of different kinds of movie sequels. And I believe, a lot of my favorite movies are the second film in a franchise. like The Empire Strikes Back for Star Wars, I'm a really big fan of, obviously, Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, The Dark Knight, Back to the Future Part 2, even Clerks 2, like a lot of these kind of movies, a lot of these movies are so much fun. Toy Story 2 is another great movie sequel that I covered on the podcast. The Bourne Supremacy, we covered Halloween Town 2. We've covered a lot of different kind of movies, and each conversation's been fun in its own way. So I definitely recommend checking it out. It's called Round 2, the film sequel, and it is my podcast that I have done 20 episodes this year, and I'm not sure if I'll do 20 for this upcoming year in 2023, but it will be there, and I will do hopefully close to that same amount of episodes. If it'd be cool if I reach 20. If not, I definitely think at least 15 it definitely would be a good number to go for. So that podcast will definitely be around for a long time, and I am super excited to see what the future brings, because I have some really cool guests lined up as well for 2023. So I also just wanted to touch on something here too. In 2022, in August, I launched my own company. It's called Oak Valley Media, and the reasoning behind jumping into entrepreneurship, right? The reason that I chose to do this is because I feel strongly in the fact that I went to school for writing, and English was my major, right, when I graduated from the University of Minnesota Morris, shout out. And I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't like the most amazing student in the world, but I learned so much, and about myself and about the content, and not only that, but like what I wanted to really do, and the skills that I learned to be able to apply and keep learning and keep getting better and moving forward, apply it to my own life and interests. And I think it made me a better writer and reader and critical thinker in a way that I don't think I would have otherwise. So I'm super thankful for that experience, and I met a lot of really cool people there. But I think in a way it's kind of led me to believe that I'm just not. I don't think I'm cut out for somebody to be to publish stuff like books with a traditional publisher, And it was important to me that I have a creative mindset, and I know what I'm looking for. And when I know what I'm looking for, I'm really good at making that happen. And, to me, launching this company, I could publish my own books under my own company, and I could learn, the ins and outs of how to do that. And then potentially I could help other people publish their books. And it was really important to me to really make this company thrive in the aspect of authenticity, like super, like genuine, and maybe not just for books though. Like it could venture into different areas as well, a lot of room for growth as well. But like my tagline for my company is authentic creative endeavors, and that's really the goal of this company. Really is I'll be publishing my own books under this umbrella, and maybe someday I'll publish other people's books too, once I get better at this process. And I also produce my podcasts under this umbrella as well. And for me, like Round 2 is obviously under that. I moved the Snyderverse Saga is under that as well, and all future projects will be under my company as well. And I'm super excited for the growth of this company. It almost makes me feel more, I guess you could say, energized, and the enthusiasm for working on new stuff and doing this, having it be on my shoulders is just, to me, it makes it all the more worth it. And to me, it motivates me to get more stuff done and to work on more stuff. And believe me, I have a lot of stuff that I'm working on. But, to start this company was just so much, it was just so awesome, and I can't wait for you to see what I have lined up. And the first thing that I published through my company, Oak Valley Media, is something that is called the Safe Journal. And if you're wondering what that might be, just for context, I work in education, okay? Like, this is not, like, all this stuff that I've been talking about so far, it's not my day job, Okay, I work at an elementary school, and I have for a few. This is my 4th year now, and one of the reasons why is because to me, I had I had a good experience as a kid for the most part, and to me, I think that I just want to give back to the next generation as much as I possibly can, and I feel like I have something to offer. I have something to give in a way to help with that. And, a lot of days, especially, and I don't want to get like too deep in the weeds of this kind of thing, but, not everybody comes from a great upbringing, a great home life, great background, and even for the kids that do, I felt like I have something to contribute to that. And part of my way of doing that I thought about was, hey, through my company, I can do that. I can make stuff like this, like the Safe Journal, which is kind of like this. It's a little bit of a double meaning because this book is for kids and teens, where it's a journal where the front of it has a key, and essentially, like, this is a book for the kids. Like, my name isn't in it; it's just my company name is at the bottom for legal reasons. But like it's like, here's the keys. This is your safe. This is your safe spot. You can write about whatever. You can draw about whatever. This is your spot to just really explore and to really think about and really work through things, ideas, vent, rant about whatever, get things off your chest. Or it's a safe spot where you can essentially write about or draw about whatever you want. You can reflect on ideas. You can, whatever, right? For whatever purpose you want it to be. And that's really the goal of this. And, because I have just such a soft spot for like school counselors, right? And people work in like mental health areas, and, the work that they do is just so monumental. And to me, this is kind of like my way of giving back to the kids of the next generation, to provide something for them, to help them. Something I wish I had personally when I was a kid. And to be able to come up with this idea, and really, to be honest with you, the idea kind of came out of nowhere and kind of materialized really, really quickly. Like, I published this right after Thanksgiving, and I thought of it like the day before Thanksgiving. I was at home and I was not feeling good. I was sick, and I just kind of just sitting there, and I was like, well, I want to be productive. I want to do something. And this idea kind of came to mind, and, less than a week later, it was published out in the world, so to be able to provide something like that is really cool. And hopefully I can do more stuff like this as well in the future. All right, so what does 2023 look like? You might be asking. Well, I can tell you this. I will be featured in a book talking about the history of Superman, written by Ed Gross, who has written multiple books about behind the scenes about movies. And I will be specifically talking about the Henry Cavill tenure of Superman. And, to be able to be associated with like Ed Gross, who is a pretty well-known author and a successful author, I might add. And to be able to talk about my favorite fictional character ever is just so amazing, and to be associated with some of these people that are also contributing to the book is just so awesome. So I'm super excited for everybody to check that out. I believe it's going to get published this year, 2023, and I can't wait for everybody to check out. I sometimes look back at what I wrote, and I don't know if all that'll be in there, but you know what, it is what it is. And to me, it kind of reminds me of, like, for my book, I had a contribution in there from Dan Marcus, a friend of mine who's a filmmaker, and he talks about Batman and the history of Batman and why it's so important. And to me, it added such a cool insight into what in my book about Batman, and kind of how this new version of Batman was, and whatnot. So it was just it was so cool to add that in my book, that to be able to be myself featured in Ed's book about Superman it's gonna be so awesome, and I can't wait for everybody to check it out. I'll definitely share that when the time comes. But as for what else is coming up, I don't have anything quite ready to announce just yet, but I will say this: I am working on a book signing for the Snyderverse Saga, and I'm also working on a special screening or two of a film celebrating an anniversary this year. And I will leave it at that because I don't have the details fully locked in just yet. But that is happening. Also, I am working on a number of other projects for the future, and that includes at least one book that I'm hoping to publish this year, 2023. And I'm also working on a rewatch podcast of a show that aired on ABC Family back in the day that you might hear more about in a few months as well, once the details are more locked in with that as well. So that's kind of what I have working on right now. Obviously, I'm working on other stuff too. I have a couple nonfiction projects in the works. I have this long in progress, I should say long work in progress of a young adult coming of age novel about that's kind of covers the genres of sports and sci-fi, which is kind of like odd, and you probably never heard of a book like that before, but it's a book that's partially semi-autobiographial in a sense, if that makes sense. So I'm really excited to eventually publish that in the next year or two. And I'm also working on a fantasy series and stuff like that. So I have a lot of things going on that I'm working on. But for sure, I'll also say this: I'm working on a picture book series as well, for like children's picture book. So a lot of really, really cool things that I'm working on that hopefully in the next couple of years I'll be able to publish and get out in the world for everybody to see. But for sure, at least one book for this year. I might be doing more journals and notebooks and stuff like that for kids. And that rewatch podcast is definitely something to keep your eye out for as well. But, just to end here, I just want to give a couple shout outs. I want to give a shout out to a couple musical writing inspirations for me. And that would be New Arcades, The Midnight, M83, Joshua Micah, and Joey Tranvik. Every time I sit down to write, their music is the one that tends to help me the most and get me motivated the most. So I'm just a big fan of all of them, and shout out to them. Also shout out to Vero. That's a platform that I have used for a few years now, and the way that they operate is something that I'm so appreciative, and the community that's on there, I'm just really happy to be a part of that community. So shout out to Vero True Social. And lastly, I just want to give a shout out to the team that I'm wearing their sweatshirt of right now, the Minnesota Vikings, for this out of nowhere crazy successful year. It's really cool to see Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook, Adam Thielen, TJ Hawkinson, Kevin O'Connell as a head coach should be up there for coach of the year. And just thinking to, like, obviously they maybe have some defensive studs too, like Harrison Smith and Eric Kendricks, Zadarius Smith, and Daniel Hunter. This team in general is just defied the odds so many times, and you can tell it's a special season. And shout out to them for winning the North for the first time in a long time. And obviously this shows that Kevin O'Connell is a great coach. They have a good system in place. You can tell the culture is really, really positive and really, really good there. They have a lot of good leadership in that building and on that field, and you can definitely tell it shows. The team isn't that much different than it was a year or two ago, but the results are very different. So, that's something to look at as well. So, shout out Vikings. Good luck in the playoffs. I know it'll be tough. Eagles, Cowboys, 49ers, those are three really, really tough teams in the NFC. So I don't know if we're making it to the Super Bowl or not, but it's been a successful season nonetheless, and one that deserves to be appreciated. So, shout out Vikings, Skol. But yeah, thank you everyone again for tuning in and listening to me ramble about what's to come and what has preceded that, I guess you could say. And just listen to me ramble, I guess. So if you're still around at this point, thank you, and for all the support that that you guys have been providing. And I'm super excited for the stuff that I'm working on to hopefully put out in the world this year. So have a happy, safe holidays and a happy successful 2023.